This is Rocky Snyder. At the tone, leave your name and message and I'll get back to you.
Let me tell you something now, Johnny. Last Thursday, I turned 95 years old. Yeah. And I never exercised a day of my life.
Welcome to another episode of the RockFit Files. I'm Rocky Snyder, and throughout this season, we are talking with experts in the field of wellness and health and fitness, as well as brain health, because this week, Patricia Faust, gerontologist, as well as being an ageless brain coach and the director of brain health, as well as the director of initiatives for successful senior aging at the Wellness Wishes Incorporated. She is joining me now, and we are going to talk about all things brain related and how to stay just at the top of your game when it comes to brain health. So, Patricia, thanks for being on with me.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really honored to be here.
Now, you do not appear to me as a gerontologist because you're not in triple digits age or not even closing in on that. What was it that inspired you? What moment in your life did you say, that's what I want to do?
I was selling medical equipment in nursing homes, mostly orthotic splints to keep when people's would get contractures from immobility. I sold splints to try to, help the extensors start to pull out instead of being all flexed up.
Mm-hmm.
And I called on a lot of dementia units this was through the 90s. So at that time, they were called lockdown units. And dementia was like that old lady in the closet, that witch in the closet, so it was just, and I was so appalled at the way they treated the behaviors of dementia, because it was just something they would put people away and they gave them lots of meds to keep them quiet. And I couldn't stand it. And I saw it all the time. So I thought there has to be a better way. So I decided to make a change. I had a couple automobile accidents. I couldn't do that job the way I used to. So I thought, well, what is it that I really want to do? So because I was really concerned about behaviors in people with dementia, I registered at the Ohio Academy of Holistic Health in Xenia, Ohio, and became a certified clinical aromatherapist. The same week that I registered there, however, I registered at the College of Mount St. Joe in Cincinnati to get an undergraduate degree in gerontology, because I needed some science background, some background to support the aromatherapy. While I was there, I got a nursing home administrator's license. And while I was right after I took my exam for the licensure, I was offered a spot in Miami University of Oxford, Ohio's graduate class for gerontology. And I went, I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with everything that goes with gerontology. Like, we've got all the issues of senior housing now, of aging in place, but being able to actually age in place with appropriate housing and equipment, and so they're not in danger living. But I I was a aging in place director for a small area agency on aging, and I spoke to a lot of the people within it was 5 counties, but it was very rural. So all the different leaders within the communities I spoke to about the shifting demographic, and that they are going to be in trouble if they don't start paying attention to the ages of the people that are in these small communities, because they weren't prepared for it. So I fell in love with everything. I don't know. I wasn't making any money at any of those things. So I looked for something that I did really enjoy. And I went to an aging conference in Posit Science, which now has the big Brain HQ online program. They had an exhibit, and they were the first ones I saw that talked about, retraining your brain. And oh my gosh, I just immersed myself in it. And from then on, it's just been continual learning about how amazing our brain really is.
Well, it's really interesting that, see, with your schooling, in aromatherapy, you had the wherewithal to understand that you needed to be grounded in the scientific world to have some validity to what it was you were going to do. Because I imagine in the Midwest, aromatherapy it's in terms with spinning crystals and trying to get
Yeah,
harmonic convergence of some way by using a tuning fork on the center of your forehead, right? It's not something that's going to be necessarily mainstreamed very well. But by saying, yes, I'm gerontologist, and that gives you a little bit more, not necessarily only validity, but just more groundedness too. And it's interesting that when I think about brain science, and you can tell me if I'm accurate in this, but from what I've been reading and understand, that brain science has learned more in the last 5 years than it
mhm,
has learned any time combined
right,
before that. I mean, the amount of information we are gleaning in the area of the brain and neurology is
right.
exponential at this moment.
That's because the government put money into brain mapping. And
Mm.
so all of a sudden, all of these people, the researchers had the money to start looking at their particular interests, and all of this information started really coming in. Um, and the two big parts of training your brain or changing your brain are neuroplasticity, which is the ability of your brain to change, to adapt to your environment, good or bad, and neurogenesis, and our brain is not fixed at around age 25. We can grow new cells and make new connections all the way until the day we die. And
Where did that
that was never a thought in anybody's mind before that.
Oh, no,
So that changed everything.
I remember back in psychology class at the university, we were taught that after age 25, the brain is no longer growing or
Yeah,
changing. And
yeah.
yet, everything else in the human body has this idea of specific adaptations to impose demand. So anything you put on or put to the body, it's going to adapt. But somewhere along the way, somebody said at age 25, that's the cutoff point. Where did that come from? Did you ever learn where that
Well,
came from?
there is some science background to why they chose that age. Um, First of all, let me say this right up front. Our brain does not know how old we are. It ages by the lifestyle that we lead.
It's a construct.
Yes, yes. So I give ages just to put some benchmarks there as a construct to let you know where you are in the process. But we grow so many cells and so many connections. I mean, proliferation is huge. Wow, from the minute we're born all the way through our teens, 20s. And we create all these cells and these connections. But around age 25 to 30, we don't have that massive growth anymore. And so now we're starting to lose cells with wear and tear and whatever, lifestyle that we're, proceeding with. And so it was believed then that our cells, our brains just declined until we died. So that was sort of the thinking of it, but they didn't know about neuroplasticity and neurogenesis yet.
Well,
So
I
that's
think
what sort of
also,
shook everybody up.
yes, I love the term neuroplasticity, and you hear it more and more these days with the adaptability of the brain. And
Right,
the interesting thing is, if we took the average activity level of a human and overlaid that onto brain function, I think you would also see at that age of 25 a reduction of purposeful physical activity on a daily basis
right.
start to diminish with every passing year. You know?
So what's happening there is, there's accelerated growth in behavior and in your physical being and in your emotional, thinking and in your cognitive skills. And so, everything's sort of exciting and you're learning, getting ready to do the next big thing. And, it's like you're not running into big barriers. So, and you feel you're young and you're strong, and it's like just push those barriers away. But you sort of get tired after pushing barriers away for a long time, and your your purpose isn't as strong as it was maybe when you were younger.
Sure.
And it needs to be strong while you're in those ages because you're going through so many different transitions. When you get to third age, when you're past retirement, that's a big issue. Purpose is a big issue at that point, because if, you probably will die if you don't have any reason to get up in the morning.
So
And
when you
so,
were working with all of these patients in your first kind of career of working with splints and
mhm.
whatnot with the aging population, did you have the forethought or the awareness at that time to see a correlation between the people that struggled to move and the level of dementia that was being represented?
Well, that was pretty obvious, only because they weren't moving enough, and so they were, because their movement was kept diminishing.
Yeah.
And so, and then because they weren't moving and they weren't getting like rehab, like extension, doing exercises, extension and flexion exercises to keep them a little looser, they just got tighter and tighter and tighter because they weren't moving.
Yeah.
And at that point, and as that happened, they're in pain all the time. So it becomes a matter of, it was a terrible life. It was a terrible
Yeah,
way to
it's
end
a
your life.
downward spiral, isn't it? The less you
Yeah.
move, the less you function, so the less you move and so on.
Yeah. And with this movement thing, with when you're looking at brain health,
Yeah.
Um, we are hardwired to move. It's the DNA we got from our prehistoric ancestors. They had to move to stay alive, and so we don't have the same environment at all. So we've been more sedentary, and it's causing big problems, obesity and a lot of chronic diseases. But it also causes some cognitive decline in that you're not giving your brain the blood, oxygen, and carbs it needs to be able to function. Prefrontal cortex is a little cannibal and does all the planning and decision making. It's right behind our forehead. And it needs lots and lots of blood, oxygen, and carbs in order to do what it needs to do. If we're not moving, the heart's not beating any faster, and so the brain's not getting what it needs, and so you become real foggy, and it's really hard to get motivated when you don't get up and move around. The other thing
So
that happens when all of this blood, oxygen, and carbs are going to your brain is you release a neurohormone called BDNF, brain derived neurotrophic factor, and that actually will help new little neurons bud out of the neuron stem cells. It acts as like a fertilizer for all these new little cells to start growing, and then it protects them while they do grow. So the only way you release BDNF is by moving. And so it's a matter of, if you want to grow those new cells, you got to get up and do some physical exercise.
So really what you're saying is that many of the things that we're seeing manifest in terms of neural deficits, whether it be dementia, Alzheimer's, or subtle memory loss, these
Mhm.
are lifestyle. These are outcomes of a sedentary lifestyle for the most
Yes.
part.
Yeah, with Alzheimer's and dementias, there's some other things that play into it. But it's by far, all pieces of what I call the brain healthy lifestyle all fit together and they act synergistically. They all do something a little bit different. And when I first started speaking about this, I said, well, if you can't do anything else, do physical exercise. Well, I found out that's great, but then you have to challenge your brain in order to use those cells that you just made and create new connections between those cells. And so you're doing neurogenesis and neuroplasticity with just those first two, with the first two parts of the brain health lifestyle. You go into nutrition and our brain specific on the type of nutrients it needs. Supplements there's really not a whole lot of really firm research about the effectiveness of supplements on the brain. It's got a lot, you have to go through the brain blood barrier, and there's a lot of different things that a supplement has to do to even make to get to where it needs to work. And so I talk about, getting all of your nutrients from food sources, because that'll make it there. And the brain will use exactly what it needs. The rest of your body will use exactly what it needs. And you're not going to take too much and you're not going to have too little, because you're eating the right foods to give your brain what it needs. So that was nutrients. And then the next one is socialization, which is what we took a huge ding on this past year.
Mm.
And connecting with other people helps your cognitive skills. It raises your cognition. And they've got research studies to show that groups that were socially connected did better on post-test, as far as comparing them with people who did brain games or people who didn't do anything. The people who socially connected did much better cognitively. So connecting is a cognitive booster. And then sleep, this is a little bit of a newer one. And while you sleep, your hippocampus, which is the center of learning and memory in your brain, actually consolidates or encodes memory that you brought in during the day. And so it's going around looking at all different parts of the brain and seeing where this memory, our brain's electrical. And so these are electrical um, signals that our memories are, and embeds them within the synapse. Our brain cells do not touch in the middle between those two branches is called the synapse, and that's chemical in there. That's where the neurotransmitters are. And our memory are encoded in the synaptic gaps. It's so weird to think of memory as something so tangible. It's not tangible, but you've got a tangible reason, of what's going on. And then if you don't get your stress under control, you wipe out everything that you just did to make your brain really healthy. So it's been a tough year for all of it.
Yes, yes. And now those are the component of a brain healthy lifestyle?
Yeah, there's some variations with Virtual Brain Health Center. We look at some models. We look more at some self-care. We sort of delineate some of these big categories into big pluses, but these are the basics. These are the parts that do all of these and live and really just to take care of yourself, reduce stress. All of these things will really give you a good, you'll grow cells, new connections, get the right nutrients, find purpose and raise your cognition with other people. And oh, I forgot the other thing that happens when you sleep. You actually have a cleaning system in your brain.
Mm.
It's glial cells that have cerebral spinal fluid. They form channels. It's called the glymphatic system. And they wash your brain at night. They go through and they flush out the toxins and the cell debris and anything else that might have gathered there during the day. So you need to sleep. It's that important. So
Oh,
yeah, there's some really important pieces to this. And they will change your brain. They're just it's overwhelming when people start to look at it and how do I do this?
certainly. Well, I know my wife will be thrilled to hear that my brain is getting washed at night because she thinks I could use some of that from time to time. I should, to the listening audience, if you are enthralled as I am with Pat Faust and what she's bringing up in terms of brain health, and you wanted to read Successful Body, of course, it's out there on Amazon and all the other booksellers. But if you were to follow me on Instagram, Rocky_Snyder, and put a little note saying Successful Body, then we pick out one name out of the week for a new follower, and you will get a copy of the Successful Body. So be sure to follow us on Instagram when you're listening to this, and who knows, you could get yourself a complimentary copy. Now, Pat, you mentioned the Virtual Brain Health Center, and I'm fascinated. I'm really kind of curious about that. What's that all about?
Well, Dr. Crystal Kohler is the founder of VBHC. She ran the very first brain health center on a long-term care campus. There was not another one in the country. And so she put all the programming together and really won lots of awards for it. She's young. She's still in her 30s, and she is like a rock star to me because she just knows brain health and wellness. She's a Global Brain Health Institute fellow from she spent a year in Dublin going to Trinity College to get her fellowship, and she knows people internationally, and this is all they think about is brain health and global brain health, and how can we make it work, and how can we teach people how to do this. So when they shut everything down, and in nursing facilities and assisted living, everybody had to stay in their room, and they weren't getting the activity they needed to get, neither mentally or physically. They weren't getting what they needed. So she had this idea to put it all online. And so um, oh my gosh, it's been such, we just launched last October, and
Wow.
it's been such a success. We are able to reach people where nobody else can.
And
So
people are allowed to like try these tests, memory tests or virtual assessments to find out what their
Yeah,
brain health is like?
yeah. There's on the site, it's virtualbrainhealthcenter.com. There's a section that says you can get a memory screen done. We have 3 classes a day, one at 11 o'clock, and that's more of a physical activity. And we have like stronger you and do stretching and exercises, some strength training, a lot of yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, so a lot of movement exercises. The morning is more movement. The 2 o'clock is more the cognitive part of this is where I usually am, is in the 2 o'clock part. We explain all different kinds of things, different, I explain all different kinds of mostly how brain functions and what happens when you do or don't do certain things to your brain. And then the 7 o'clock is like a wind down. There's meditation and mindfulness, and it's to finish up the day and get you ready to go to bed. And so it flows like that. We're going to do we're not doing weekends after they're on break right now. And then on Sunday, we'll pick back up, but we'll do every other day, like Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And the next week it'll be Tuesday, Thursday. And the classes at this point are $5 each.
Okay.
And Crystal's put a bunch of different packages, bundles together to take as many classes as you want during the month, and whatever it is that you want to do. She's really willing to work with people. We had people from 15 states during the conference, and then we had faculty from 5 countries who
Wow.
presented. So it was the coolest thing ever, and I think that Leanne Stuver is our director of lifelong learning, and so she really adds such a big component of this, because that's one of the things for mental stimulation. You need to be a lifelong learner, and
Mm.
so she has a lot of different programs that she puts on too. So um, we've gotten lots of good feedback on this. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, these classes, and they're live classes. These are not recorded right
Right.
now. So you have an instructor going through each
Yeah.
class live.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's fun too, because our instructors from all over the place. We have one instructor who's in New York, and she does easy yoga. It wasn't so easy for me, but for somebody who does yoga all the time, it's probably easy. And she does like chair exercises, and she's in New York. And so we had somebody from Ireland doing some classes. We had somebody from India doing breath work, teaching you how to breathe successfully. I mean, all different kinds of things that apply different kinds of activities that help the brain. And it's just amazing. It's not just what I just talked about, those 6 different parts. This is actual function. So it's really good. Function that helps your brain. It's really good.
Oh, that sounds it. Now, when it comes to the successful body, you wrote a chapter in there, and what are some of the things that you touched upon? Obviously, it's what we're talking about right now, but were there
Right.
any specifics?
Well, I think that I did the brain healthy lifestyle and how it each contributes to being able to change your brain. And I think that you have to understand neuroplasticity in that you have to do something repetitively and consistently to actually create a new neural pathway. What cells fire together, wire together. And this is what changes your brain. Now, when you do that you don't have to think about doing that action anymore, because now you've created neural pathway. It's dropped down into the subconscious in the habit area. And so you can just do it. You don't have to think about it. When you're learning something new, it's the best time for your brain, because you're making all these mistakes and really fumbling around. Your brain loves that because it's learning. Once you've got it mastered, it doesn't do a whole lot for your brain anymore, because it doesn't have to think and work hard. So I think that's important to remember, that you need to keep doing new and novel things, living in a novel and complex environment, and that'll really sharpen your brain up. I was 50 when I went back to grad school, and all my classmates were 25.
Hmm.
And so they were at their cognitive peak, and I was on my first acceleration loss of cognitive. And it's like, I was like a deer in headlights with first couple weeks, but I changed my brain, and I could keep up as well with them, as if I was 25 years younger. So you can do it. You really can change your brain, but you have to have a commitment to it. I can tell you how to do this till I'm blue in the face, but if you aren't committed to actually living this lifestyle, you might get some successes, but you're not going to create that big change you need to create.
Well, I'm glad you bring that up because for those that are in the throes of dementia, let's just
Hmm.
take that, and they may not have the cognitive awareness of the state that they're in.
Right.
How do you address that? Because you've just said you really need to have a, a desire to do this, but what if you do not?
Well, for people with dementia, it was always thought, well, it's too late. Well, it's never too late. We can put programming together to help them benefit. And so it's not that, maybe slow down the decline. It's not that you're going to get completely recovered, but you can always change your brain. But the activities have to be appropriate to the person who's using them. And this is where Crystal is just she's a master at this. She is so good at finding appropriate programs to help people who already have dementia. When I talk about brain healthy lifestyle, I'm talking about people who are cognitively intact. And they're just,
Sure.
they're going through normal brain changes as they get older.
Okay.
And so we have to have special programming for those who have dementia. Let me add this. The Alzheimer's Association, I think in their international conference a couple years ago, finally said a brain lifestyle can prevent Alzheimer's. Now, all the whole time before that, I could never say prevent. I could say delay or slow down, but I could never say prevent. And Alzheimer's Association said, no, this has verifiable proof that you can prevent Alzheimer's if you live this brain healthy lifestyle. And so it's like,
That
yay.
Yeah, that was mind blowing, I'm sure, for the entire community. Just waiting, or you could even breathe and a good breath and say, "Oh my gosh, now we can actually move forward."
Right. It absolutely. And it gave so much credence to what we were doing. Before it's like, well, you have to do all this work and it's what's it going to do for me? What's in it for me? Well, this is what's in it for you. You can prevent Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is risk is 70% due to lifestyle. 70%. And environment and genetics are the other 30%.
Oh,
So you get worried that you're getting older, maybe one of your parents had Alzheimer's or grandparents, and you're flipping out because, oh no, what's going to happen to me? Well, chances are, if you really live healthy and clean, you'll be able to push through this. And, there's still, for some people, there is a genetic component that puts them at a little higher risk. Doesn't mean that if they really live a really good lifestyle that they can't override that. I mean, there was a study called the Nun Study. I'll just say this really quick. And there were nuns, I forget how many, 150 something nuns in Kentucky, and they donated their brains to the University of Kentucky in Lexington after they passed away. And when they autopsied the brains, they found out that there were some of the nuns actually had plaques and tangles, but never ever did they show that when in their life. There was no indication that they had Alzheimer's disease. Well, they live a brain healthy lifestyle. When you're doing that, you're building what's called cognitive reserve. And these are extra cells and connections that when you have a neurodegenerative disease and they're starting to chip away at these cells and connections, you've got extras to take their place. And so that's what you're doing when you're increasing volume and you're creating a surplus of cells and connections to use. So I mean, they showed it in the research. It was called the
instead
Nun
of
Study.
it's like a goodwill account, all we will just call it a healthy brain account.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Cognitive reserve.
Cognitive reserve.
Yeah.
That's fabulous. I love hearing all this information about what we can do, and that it is, well, is it reversible? That's the other thing. I know it's preventable, but what about when you start to acquire a much healthier lifestyle than
Hmm.
the one that got you there? What's the likelihood that we can actually reverse?
Well, if you are really pushing hard to and using your neuroplasticity activities to your advantage. Yeah, you can. I have a friend who she's an influencer on social media, and her website is called The Best Brain Possible. Her name's Debbie Hampton. And Debbie years ago was despondent, and she took a whole bunch of pills, a lot of them, handfuls at a time, she said. And they didn't find her until these pills had started metabolizing. And so when she came out of the coma about a week later, she had a traumatic brain injury.
Ooh.
And Debbie, Debbie, oh my gosh, she looked for every modality she could find to change her brain. And she did. She could hardly walk or talk. She didn't have any clear thoughts. But if you see her today, you would have never, ever guessed that she was in that bad a shape. And she's a walking example of neuroplasticity. So she did neurofeedback and hot yoga and acupuncture and oh there were like 4 or 5 hyperbaric oxygen chamber
Yes.
to change her brain. And she did. She completely recovered from this traumatic brain injury that she had. And so Debbie's amazing. She's an amazing person.
Wow.
So I've seen it. I know her. I've seen what she did. So I know you can reverse these horrible changes. But again, you have to be committed.
And with this information, with these approaches, is this something that we're seeing in senior residence environments, in extended health kind of a care assistance? And is it getting there yet, or is it going to be a little while?
I think it's still going to be a little while. So I had a nursing home administrator's license, but aromatherapy wasn't very popular back when I got my certification, and nobody understood the power of essential oils. And so finally I gave up. It's like, oh my gosh, I can't now if you go someplace and you talk about essential oils, everybody's all about it. So exciting. But 20 years ago, nobody, I was just so far ahead of myself.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
same thing's happening with brain health. I started this back in 2006, and it was started learning and really started speaking and stuff, and it was still like and the research was just starting to. So now they've got good research to support the things I say, and you can plan to make things happen the way you want. They were rehabbing people after strokes forever and not even knowing that it was neuroplasticity. They
Mm.
were changing people's brains back then. And Gabby Giffords, when she got shot in the head, that's
Yeah.
exactly what they did. They rerouted her brain. And so they changed her brain. I mean, there's so many examples, and nobody ever believed it then. But now we know why. So it's pretty cool.
So with anything in this nation that starts to become more popular, what happens is you've got a whole bunch of people out there starting to come up with their own associations or groups or certifications, and they are jumping on the bandwagon. And unfortunately, to just their goal is to make a profit.
Yeah.
Maybe I hope that most of them, their goal is altruistic at the same time, but nonetheless, we're starting to see brain health this and brain health that start popping up all over the internet. Pat, what is the best way to navigate through the brain health world to find the truth, I guess, the organizations like yourself,
Hmm.
and the ones you belong to that are leading the way with good, grounded, scientific based evidence?
Well, I think first of all, I think that people need to be educated about what they're looking for. What are you looking for?
Okay.
And this is what can happen, and this probably won't happen. You can't be listening to people who promise you the moon when they can't even give you a moonbeam. So it's I have a pet peeve about a supplement that's on the market right now. They run commercials constantly, and how these people have been taking this for so long, and it's changed their brain and giving them a really healthy life. Their memory is great now. Well, they've been sued a bunch of times. and it must make enough money that they don't care because
Mhm.
they still it's on the it's you can buy it in stores, it's expensive. But I look at the people, and it's not the supplement that's doing it to them, it's the lives they're leading. These are all very active people who are they're staying, they have purpose and they're staying connected and they're living healthy lives. The supplement's not doing it. Maybe as a placebo, they believe it is, but so you have to sort of know what to believe and what not to believe. You have to go in there with a bit of a skeptic's perspective and let whoever's telling you this stuff prove it to you. Prove it that they know what they're doing. I was told a number of years ago I went to SCORE, the Senior Corps of Retired Executives who help small
Yeah.
businesses, and I was trying to break into corporate with their wellness programming and make this the umbrella that all the wellness programming would fall under because everything starts and stops in the brain. And I got nowhere. And they said, you know what? He says, you got a great idea, but you're going to spend 10 years teaching, educating people about this. And as soon as they understand, somebody else is going to go right in there and sell it. And they were right. They were right. So it's just something I have to deal with. Um, and I think my reputation um, is really good enough as a brain expert that people believe me. So that helps. It's a tough. Of course, everybody wants to make money.
Sure. And one of the big kind of red flags for me is anytime that somebody tells you you can take this, or for only three payments of 29.99, you can
Yes.
get exactly what you're looking for without
Yes.
any added effort on your part. But isn't that kind of I don't like really slamming our culture, but we have been raised with instant gratification, and if you know the right people or have the right product, everything can be yours. When in truth, just like you're saying with brain health, you really need to want to do something
Mhm.
about improving your memory or your faculties or anything else. And it's not simply going to be done by just taking a pill.
One of the things people, I'm a planning committee volunteer for the Walk to End Alzheimer's for this year in Cincinnati, and they throw out all the Alzheimer's stats. And one of the things that um, people are more afraid of getting Alzheimer's than they're afraid of getting cancer. So if you tell somebody, I mean, I can coach on memory, different memory tools and strategies and how memory's formed and, different ways for you to be able to capture memories a little bit easier. I can coach on that. But somebody comes in and says, well, this is how you can keep your memories. And it just is so infuriating to me because you're dealing with a person's fear and, losing your memory, losing your cognitive abilities is terrifying. And yet people are capitalizing on that fear to sell their product. So, I mean, I've been in it long enough to know how to take a look at the product and see what they did to get to the point where they are and know if okay, this could work. There are some really big people out there that have really good programs. So, but I look at it as programming and lifestyle. I don't look at it as pop a pill. If there was a pill to pop and give you your memory back, believe me, it would have been on the market a long time ago.
Yeah, you say really it comes down to proper eating, clean eating,
Mhm.
movement, novelty. The brain loves novelty. So
Mhm.
doing different things and challenging it. And of course, the other thing in our culture is, well, how much should we be doing? And I always have a problem with that because really what the person is asking is, what is the minimum I actually have to do in order to see anything occur, right? They're
Yeah.
never asking what is too much. They're asking like, what's the least amount of work I have to do? So I'm not going to even ask you about volume. However, I would like to know, is this, well, this is a lifestyle. So I'm imagining you're going to tell me that something needs to be done on a daily, regular basis.
Repetition and consistency. That's what's going to change your brain. So you do have to be consistent in your actions. Now, the Mind Diet is the Alzheimer's approved diet for to get the right nutrition. And the Mind Diet gives you, they let you eat red meat 2 times a week if you want. The
Hmm.
Mediterranean diet is what it was all based on, but now the Mind Diet is the Mediterranean diet and the DASH diet combined. So the heart diet and the brain diet are together. And so they give you a couple little outs. Well, when they give stats back on the improvement from using the Mind Diet, they give one if you're totally committed to eating and living, that's this diet, the way it's the way, like, it was a pretty high number, like 85% improvement and brain function and stuff. If you don't do it, if you casually follow the Mind Diet, you'll still get, like, I think it was like a 35% improvement. So they know that not everybody's going to be doing this, and people are going to get frustrated and they give up. So they actually give a, well, if you're trying and this is all you can do, then you're still going to see a bit of a change. You're not going to get that big change that you might be looking for. And I think with when you look at brain health and you look at behavior, it's overwhelming what you have to do. But if you start to think about it in terms of how do you live your everyday life, it's not so overwhelming. And if you know what a heart healthy lifestyle is like, then you know what a brain healthy lifestyle is like. They're the same.
Yeah. There's really no separating, is there?
Right, right. So I think that when I work with somebody, I sort of break it down into smaller pieces so they have some victories initially and then start layering on extras. But you can't start with the big project up front and say, okay, I'll do this and this and this. You have to really break it down because you've got a fear factor going on. If they come to you for brain work, then there's a fear factor there, and you have to get past that. And then they have to trust you and what you're telling them, and give them some not a girls, not a boys, or it's okay. Let's try approaching it this way and see what happens. So you have to give both. You have to go both ways with this because most of the people are a little bit older. And although if you start all this lifestyle when you're young, oh my gosh, how great is that? You don't have the loss in brain volume because you're constantly rebuilding your cognitive reserve. So
Well, that was going to be my next question. If we're trying to create a culture and a lifestyle, what better way to do it than starting out young?
yeah.
So, with places like the VBHC, the Virtual Brain Health Center, or
Mhm.
the other organizations in which you are the director of or working in concert with, there's one thing, you're never going to slow down. I get this feeling. But
No,
are you
no.
doing some type of outreach programs for the youth or just young adults or any direction in that way?
Probably right now, the focus is the boomer group is so huge.
Yeah.
And so trying to approach, here's the other thing about all of this, the numbers for rises in dementia cases. Oh my gosh. I don't remember the exact stats now, but they were like tripling over, like by 2030. So we're at 15 million globally now. By 2030, we're going to be at least 30 million. We don't have caregivers. We don't have the healthcare infrastructure. We don't have the money to take care of all these people with Alzheimer's disease because it's a long process and it costs a lot of money to get the care you need.
Yeah.
So one of the things is to start teaching people to take better care of themselves so they're not in that position. And but I did a little stint with Posit Science as an independent contractor after I learned about them. And they had their programs then were the brain fitness program, and cognitive insights was auditory and visual input. And these guys that were doing the training were in competition with each other to see how fast they can make their brains start working. They were in their 20s. So it was like, this is, the regular competition thing rising up. When you can do something better than somebody else, you try really hard. So I just feel that if younger people by 40, you've used up all your extra cognitive reserve. So now at 40, you got tip of the tongue going on. And why did I walk into this room? What did I go to the grocery store to get? You've got those slips now. And that freaks people out. But
Yeah.
they've used up the cells in the areas of the brain that help you remember that. So it's really the earlier you start, the better and the easier it'll be to keep your brain high functioning. Who doesn't want a high functioning brain till the day they die?
Really well said. No, I'm in there for it. So let's just say for the listening audience, if they are interested in improving their own brain health, or
Mhm,
they've got family members that could use a little bit of excitement in that arena,
mhm.
what is the best way to utilize your services, the organizations, and so on? How can they find out more?
Well, they can go to my website, which is mostly blogs, but it does talk about some of the other things that I do. And so that is myboomerbrain.com, and take a look at what I write about and what I coach on. And it's I write for some other magazines, so some of those articles are in there too. And I have some aromatherapy stuff in there because that it still plays such a big part in helping people remember. Olfactory cueing will help you
Mhm.
remember. And so I've got all of the programs and the presentations that I give. They're all in there. And so it's the best way to get a good picture of me as far as my boomer brain goes. Now the virtual brain health center is humming along, and it's going to it's just going to get bigger and bigger. So if you go to the virtual brain health center, virtualbrainhealthcenter.com, you can see what type of programming are coming up. She puts the calendars are going up for April by the end of this weekend. So you can see what type of programs are going up, and all you have to do is register in, and you'll get some flashes. And if you want to, $5 a class, it's not steep. It really gives, it's a bargain. Um, and Wellness Wishes is a whole different program. I'm going to be working on a project called Degas. And what that will be, it's a sanctuary for rescued animals and homeless vets. And so
Mm.
yeah, so homeless vets will have a place to live and get their life back on track, and learn how to, new skills. They'll actually be taking care of the property that all this will be on. So they'll learn maintenance and electrical and whatever. They'll also they'll be part of the teaching the dogs how to be service dogs or therapy dogs. And so they'll gather up any homeless animals and they'll bring them there. And if they're old, they'll give them a safe place to live till they die. But other ones, they'll teach them how to be service animals or therapy dogs. So I am so excited about this program.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, yeah.
Obviously, absolutely zero moss is growing on you right now. You just keep on rolling with everything. Pat, this has been such a delightful conversation, and really intriguing and informative at the same time. And yeah, I've got some homework to do, I think. So I'm going to put all the contact information in the description below within the podcast here itself. So for the listening audience or viewing audience, if you want to, just go down below and you'll get a whole bunch of insight and direction to help improve your brain health. So Pat, I just can't thank you enough for coming on and joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I love talking about this stuff, so I could talk forever. But I really appreciate it. I think it's important information that needs to get out. Oh, and if anybody wants, they can email me at patricia@myboomerbrain.com. I'd be
Beautiful.
happy to answer any questions, or, set up a phone call if they want anything like that. So,
Wonderful. Thank you.
okay.
That's it for another episode of the Rockfit Files. Remember, follow us on Instagram, Rocky_Snyder, and you could be the lucky one to get a copy of The Successful Body. Thanks, Pat Faust, for coming on the show with me, and be sure to tune in next week when we have another contributing author to The Successful Body. Until then, have a great week.